So good to see you, Simon.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Same to you.
Let me take just a deep breath. Hi, Simon.
Greetings. Hello, hello.
How are you doing?
Good, and also very transformative. That's probably the best two words. Like I'm good because I'm abundant and grateful and happy with many, many things. But at the same time, my own personal sort of transformation is I'm right in it.
Wow, I love to hear that because it's I don't want to say similar, but I resonate with that as well. And it's been a while we don't talk, which is great sometimes to look back to see like the wave of time, how it has developed. I always been very grateful to you because you've been probably my main mentor astrologically and many other ways. And the best thing, I think, when you mentor somebody or when you are a mentee is like the time that you actually have to start walking on your own. And so you became the mentor in my life to find the path of evolution. So when you say that you're in a transformative feeling, it's actually great because I feel the same way within my own wave of transformation. I feel that I'm in a place that is like, wow, how exciting is this time? Although it looks a little bit, I mean, it doesn't look a little bit, it looks strange and weird, but hey, we sign up a contract to be Aquarian people, which is the explorers of the unknown. So in that sense, I also feel a little bit like I resonate with you. This is a dialogue that I'm doing because I wrote a book, and the book is just this ongoing journaling and having a deep relationship to myself through just noticing and observing my own progress of evolution with the tools that you gave me and additional tools that they were given to me throughout that process. But I will say, for instance, that since I got in touch with you, probably at the lowest time in my life after my Chiron return, it's interesting because today the sun is on my Chiron. So there's something more so beautiful about it that is kind of connecting. And I'm a little bit emotional about it because I've done such a great job. And a lot of it is because I gave myself the space and the time to learn from somebody else.
Okay.
And this somebody else, which is you, I have to say that I'm in awe to see how much you're also transforming yourself through mentorship. Mm-hmm. So my first question is like, how does it feel for you right now in this like transformative moment of your life to be not only mentoring others, but be mentoring yourself through others?
It's powerful. I think that's like, to start there, it's powerful because there is as when you're naturally drawn towards transformative knowledge, like for instance human design, evolutionary astrology, you come into contact with it initially in a way where it's got lots of novelty. You're very excited about it. It's going to solve a problem that you currently have at the moment. Most of the time we come into these systems that way. And for me, that was the same thing. I've always had astrology as a tool to make sense of chaos. Mm-hmm. And in many ways, it's been highly supportive. But this moment right now, and that relationship between what transformative knowledge has mean for me as mentoring and guiding other people, but then having to administer it for myself, that has deepened my relationship to the transformative tools that I've been externalizing. As in, my relationship to administering myself has given me deeper authenticity. And a lot of my experiences, when I sort of reflect back on conversations with you or different points in my life, especially over the last 10 years, I've looked back at it and thought to myself, now I have a deeper emotional connection to the space that person was at. Mm. You know what I mean? Because of my own kind of relationship to it, and that hasn't, So that's what I'm currently experiencing right now and having.
That's so beautiful. And knowing, for instance, the journey that it's almost interesting because if you're a person that has always been willing to go into the depth of what soul is seeking, you know, very transformative, very Scorpion, Plutonian, 8th house kind of waters. Yeah. You have a lot of that. I have a lot of that. So in a way, it's like common sense to go deep It's like, all
Correct.
right, let's go dive for the pearl. We don't know how long it's going to take, but it is also a journey that can't be done for others. It's transformative and it's individual. So for me, this journey has been so powerful because it really was integrating a lot of things that I was very interested in since I was little. Like I inherit my father's library when he died, and he was reading Nietzsche and he was reading Carl Jung. And I just like really loved to find all those books. And I was trying so hard to find him. The presence of my father was so important for me that I found everything through the books. And even though I did not understand a word, I kind of felt connected because he had underlined a lot of his books. So I was trying to find him. Yeah. And then I was like, well, he likes this guy, whatever, Nietzsche. I could never even pronounce his name. But I was like, oh, I love the fact that he says that God is dead. And that really impacted me a lot when I was 11 around, because I did not make sense of what God was, in the sense of like, if there's a God outside of me, how come that God took my father away? And also, why are the nuns in the school telling me that my father is already in heaven? Like, that didn't make sense for a person with a Pluto in the 8th house. It's like, no. So it was interesting because in this path of me trying to find my father, I think there was the biggest gift that I was given, because his absence gave me my presence, but it took me years to figure that out. And also, as you know, like, because we work together in your mentorships, a lot of my empowerment has come from the fact that I have to be self-aware about my self-sufficiency in second house Taurus. So I feel like it's super powerful that I finished my mentorship with you. Probably, I can't remember, it was end of 21, I think. And then, yeah, it was 2021. And it was exactly when I think the Venus was in retrograde in Capricorn, which is 12th house. And I was like so focused as to, okay, I'm going to find out what value is. Like really, like dive into it. I dove into Bitcoin. I mean, everything that's value, from like money, self-esteem, just my relationships, myself with my needs with others. So I feel like the writing of the book has been this journey of acknowledging that if I didn't have that relationship to myself, I could not even talk about value. So my next question for you is kind of like, what is the thing that you most value in your life? What is at this point?
What's the thing that I value the most? I think peace of mind. For me right now, peace of mind is the, and what that means for me personally is, if I look at my own healing journey and deeper sense of returning to wholeness, then returning back from emotional disassociation and coming back to earth, really reclaiming the emotionally disregarded parts of myself and returning them. And so where I find that healing process is actually in nature. And in nature, I experience a frequency, a tone which is different to the human construction at the moment, which is this busyness, this loud noise, this hum that's just there, that's consistently pulling your attention away from connecting to that inner space. And so what I'm noticing is I'm finding myself wandering more into, or wanting to embrace those spaces as a way to, as not only to feel the earth, but to also come back to what I call rewilding, which is breaking down the internalized structure of societal conditioning that has divorced us from our own inner world, that is inherently non-linear, that doesn't follow this sharp angle x, just the way that we have. So it's interesting that you mention Nietzsche and this idea of God is dead. Something recently occurred to me, as well as also listening. I'm sure on our journeys together that we've explored people like Vervaeke and many other people we've talked to. And I think one of the conversations they were talking about Nietzsche's relationship to God is dead is that we have in that time divorced ourselves from the agency of the cosmos. In other words, to say that there is no such thing as mystical cosmic relationship that we have to it. It's all
Mhm.
scientific. If you can't prove it, it doesn't exist. And I think that has eroded humanity's capacity to feel a deeper sense of connection.
Yeah.
And rewilding is a returning to that mystical marriage between cosmos and human. And this is kind of the insights and the reflections that are present with me right now. And so valuing that peace of mind is an act of returning to that state and then becoming a conduit or a messenger for it, essentially.
Yeah, I guess it's because if I relate to what you're saying, from my perspective, it's like I needed to find the peace in my heart rather than my
Right.
mind.
Correct.
My mind is very curious, and so my mind can go like 100 miles per hour, and sometimes I just have to go like, okay, Monica, what? Like let's stay in the body, because I can just be at 100 miles per hour, just so curious. And we're going to talk about curiosity in a bit, because I think it's fundamental as well to be able to go and dive into the depths of the psyche, but at the same time to have the ability to be joyful and playful, to just be curious about a bird flying around and you following that bird just for the sake of the journey of not doing anything. So that's, I think, is important. But in my case, because my North Node is in Cancer, fifth house, so opening up to my heart was the difficult thing for me, because that was like, oh God, now do I have to be all like crying and caring for people? And so it's interesting because I do care a lot for people, but there's something very interesting about me that I realize is like I have tough love for people, like for people. So it was understanding that in my relationships with myself and with others, if I saw that there was agency on the other, there was commitment on the other towards themselves, not towards me, towards themselves. If there was curiosity towards themselves, if there was this spark of joy towards themselves, then I was willing to be opening about a relationship with that in that moment, whether it was a mentorship or it was because I open always relationships, either I want to learn from somebody or somebody wants to learn from me. So there's always this like interrogation, is this the right thing for me? Because I don't do this all the time. As you know, I'm an artist. So I also, even when I engage in projects, I want to make sure that these projects are going to be a platform for me to dive deeper, because I'm going to use them as like a playground. So I can go for that pearl. Even if they're about art, they're always more than the art for myself. They're like a place to explore and to be able to make something out of these ideas and give it to the world in a way that they don't even know what I'm talking about, which I don't care. But the energy and the essence of it is there. Yes. And if somebody's curious to ask, I will tell them, but I don't have to, because my journey in it is being done because I am relating to it. So I will say that probably the most powerful thing based on my chart that it was been so challenging for me is relationships. Having that Uranus ruling my ascendant and being in the seventh house is like, oh God, like it was all about chopping people, chopping heads. And I never understood what was I doing wrong. So by the time I was realizing, I was already in a corner crying, like, what did I just do? Because it was a protection thing. And then needless to say that I never felt okay in groups. Groups were like the worst. And that's where my South Node is. But now I think that I figured at this point, I'm still not very super comfortable. Like I'm not like I'm so relaxed, but I'm so aware that this is my path. So I'm willing to be very curious about how I relate to myself every day, all the time. And that's going to give me the illumination of the road to see, okay, this thing is triggering me. This thing is saying something. This is why I should put a boundary. How am I going to express that? Oh, the person didn't like my boundary. Okay, tough luck. Still my boundary. I'm not going to fall into the thing. And then same thing with groups. So I've been doing this. And one of the tools that I got from you directly and indirectly, because I got so much stuff indirectly from you, and I see that you're employing in your work right now, which I find it fascinating and very beautiful, is the embodiment of the archetypes, not as these ideas that are so beautiful. I mean, when you think about them, you put them out in the sky and they all make sense, that you can tell stories. That's what the Greeks did, tell stories of one another. But at the very end, how does that work for me? I mean, yes, or what, Aquarius. So how does that work? How does that even feel? So getting in touch with the work of Gabor Mate was very important for me. So I did all that cycle, and it was, wow, like amazing, because I was able to actually start having a practice, and I have somebody that I work with for like almost 3 years right now. His name is Kai. He's doing something called Hakomi method. I've been able to really go deeper into that. And there's not a single relationship that I have right now with anybody, they're very narrow, that I don't apply that recognition of there's an embodiment of a feeling. So when somebody says something that I don't like, I probably know maybe they're disconnected to that sense, and I don't take it personal, which I did in the past. Like, oh, why is this person being mean? And so I really love if you can talk a little bit about that process for you, that it probably came in parallel ways, but I see that you're employing in your mentorships, and it's very unique. It's very Aquarian. What you're doing is very much you, and I love it, because you're like this explorer, very curious, trying different things. I believe you're a 1-3 as well, human design. So you're just all about Dora the Explorer, like
literally.
And but you're doing it for you. But then, whether I want to be in it for 5 minutes or 10, that's up to me. And it's not up to you, which I love it. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this journey into this space has been illuminating in such a beautiful way. Like, seriously, I've really, my relationship to what you're talking about right now has been, and the exploration of that and the wandering. You'll notice me over the next, I don't know if you see the work that I'll put out, I've replaced curiosity with wandering. And one of the reasons why that's the case is because, and this is kind of like a silly little nuance thing, but to me, wandering is a descent into the embedded parts of our physical reality, right? So it's not to say I know something I'm looking for, it's to say I'm not sure what I'm looking for. And so there's a kind of like openness to it. This is how I imagine it. Whether this is reality is a different story. But the wandering, what it does for me is it sets the psychological and cognitive position in me to have my perceptions more alert, because I'm not narrowing something that I'm looking for. It's more of a just dropping into and letting an intuitive kind of process allow me to follow something, to see what is emerging, and it's never ending. And in that way, it's a beautiful example of the North Node in Gemini, right, that I have, as well as my moon in Gemini, which is, for me, in embodiment is the literal resolution of my soul's life this time around. That's why it feels so illuminating and so wondrous, because the relationship to the exploration in an embedded way means that what I communicate, because of this moon in Gemini, North Node in Gemini, has that nature to it, has that tone to it, and naturally attracts the right people. And then that feedback loop allows me to feel a deep, meaningful experience. Whereas before, the exploration of things and knowledge has allowed me to have that. But in a way, there's always been something that I felt has been missing. And I didn't know that that was missing until I actually came into contact with this relationship, this idea of embedding and embodying and coming to earth. And once that sort of existed for me, that became a priority. So you talk about the Greek myths and stuff, right? I was exposed to it. It came into my life, and I started to realize, hold on, there's something amazing here. But why do they tell the stories the way that they do? And it became aware that their culture had a very creative way of story, right? It was imaginative. And then I was like, okay, well, there's these left and right brain hemispheres. And if you can kind of go into that process and recognize those two polarities, you actually are finding that embodied experience.
Yeah, beautiful you say that, because that gives me into another couple of things that I can touch about. One is the imago, which is the image of the imagination, that we basically can stem from a desire, like you have a desire for something, and then you feel like you want to explore. So it's the next step, because you can have the desire and do nothing. But then you have the desire, and I believe you have the 41 gate. So you have the desire to go and have an emotion somewhere. So that's the exploration, like, going like that. I have my moon in the ninth house. So it's very, it wants to wander, but it's really looking deeply because it's really deep. So I'm a wanderer, but but I'm exploring, like, okay, with the loop, with the magnifier, but I also have my Jupiter next to my sun in balsamic, and my Mercury is retrograde. So they're in a sandwich, the sun is like the ham, and the other two guys are like, okay, what are we going to do with the sun? Squeeze it in the third house. So this curiosity is always, I have also Venus in Gemini. So believe me, I know what it is to be wondering and imagining and kind of laughing about it, because there's something very materialistic about Taurus and second house that is about, okay, great. So how are we going to land this? Because it's beautiful, but how are we going to do this and make it materialize? So I did find a lot of that unconsciously through my artwork. And when I noticed that I could actually make these miracles happen, and I could have people trust me and give me a lot of money, I was like, wow, if I could do this with my life, I'm good. So that's when I'm like, the exploration went, okay, let's go deeper and point to the imagination of, like, the most amazing thing that I can do in my life is get away from that sense of pain or suffering or whatever I was identifying with, because it's an identification that we just use because we allow that in our brain to be, labeling ourselves. Or we allow other people to define us because we make the choices to be with certain kind of people. So we disempower ourselves because we think these people are actually validating ourselves. But until you don't validate your own person, everything else is just a bunch of trash in a way. Correct. So I like that you say, because one of the things that right now I like to say that I like to synthesize my life, because it's, life for me is a trinity, and there's left and right, but it's never equal. So lately, I think you're aware, I'm studying with Saifedean Ammous. I'm studying principle of economics, which I find the most beautiful, most elegant way of understanding the world in a very practical, pragmatic way, very left brain. And it is based on something called human action that this economist called Mrs. wrote about 100 years ago. And he talks about human action, and he talks about something that I'm really, really want to dive deep into. It's called praxeology, which is the logic of practice. Beautiful. But it is deductive and it's logical. So it's about making the right decisions in your life that are going to lead to an economical decision, because everything is economical. We're all trading ideas. We all have to eat. We all have to sleep. And money has become this dirty word that nobody wants to talk about, especially if you do creative stuff. Oh, I shouldn't talk about money. No, you should talk about money, because money is what, makes the world go around. Believe it or not, it's not a song. It's what it is. So what has happened to me is because I spent so much time delving into the unconscious, psychologically, Jung, evolutionary astrology, everything is human design. Everything is about bringing light to the psyche, what is lying underneath, and making it integrate in the now. When I discover praxeology, it's like, wow, I'm going to go dive deep into this, because I really want to understand the logical part of my brain that I so much don't like to focus on. Although I am a right, left. So I'm falling in love with that little left, which is, thank God I have that little bit of a left, otherwise I'll be very loopy. So I know you're doing a lot of this. And I wanted to add something else. So I'm doing a lot of meditations that are with sound for the last year. To balance and find an equilibrium between my two sides of the brain. So the thing that came to me in the last weeks is being that, and it was in one of the classes with Saifedean, and I've been studying financial charts because I love charts. So I look at them in terms of time. So there's something that it was said during the class and everything, that is, equilibrium is a process. I say that to you. What does it make you feel? Equilibrium is a process.
Wow. I mean, I haven't thought about it deeply in that sense, but I can see that. I can see how you can arrive at that place and see that equilibrium is a process. That's, if you just think of it in terms of pure physics. Yeah, that's amazing. I'm intrigued by that quite a lot.
Yeah. And equilibrium is a process means, for instance, when you apply it to price, it is a process between supply and demand. So it's not
Oh,
unique.
yes,
It's
yes, yes.
basically, you look at a chart, same with astrology. That's why
Mm,
I love looking at charts. You look at a chart, natal chart, and the
mm,
equilibrium, if that chart is the process of that moment of birth. But then you have progressions, or you have transits, or you have whatever is happening. The
yeah,
equilibrium is going to be relevant when you look at the chart and you talk to the person, because this is what I think is so important. When you look at charts, the chart speaks from the person itself. Sometimes you don't have
yes,
to even look at it.
yes,
So the equilibrium is going to be found in that relationship between the chart and the person, because it's there.
yeah.
It's written, it's all over.
Mm,
And I think that I was thinking before I spoke to you that if I have to summarize what was the best thing that I got from your teachings or from your transmission, I would say that what you did with the transmission was the ability for me to know that I can trust the tools you gave me so I can use them and I don't have to depend on you.
yes.
As much as I loved, having you as my mentor, there's this thing about Aquarius that I have to okay, after a while, it's okay, bye-bye, I gotta go. I have to do my thing. Like when I left, I always leave Houdini. But I was so thankful because I said, oh, when I left, I had the tools I needed at the time.
That's a very important thing, and I'm glad that you pointed that out because that is a core philosophy. I mean, even the current evolutionary astrology immersion that I'm teaching at the moment, one of the most important things that I'm driving across is that this is something that you then take away and you apply it and you do it yourself. You don't have to have dependencies in the same way that you've as people have needed for astrologers before. So I'm like the anti-astrologer where I'm like, no, less attachment to astrologers equals better, more association with conversation with an astrologer healthier. You would use an astrologer as a way to develop conversation rather than see them as a savior.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think that I wanted to circle back to, you were talking about your Chiron and having the sun there today and arriving at a point in your life where that was being activated. For me, what has merged with the Taurus archetype or with the second house as an example is humanity's capacity to say no as a Taurus theme, because it's an instinct within us to preserve. Do I want
Yeah.
to extend energy out to this person and then be consumed by that polarity in Scorpio, or can I preserve this space right now, this personal space, and say no, therefore not opening up to energy outward? And I think a lot of your generation, Pluto and Virgos, didn't have that conditioning that they were allowed to say no. And so therefore the recovery of that ability is very much, I think, embedded into that cycle of that Chiron return. And then when I hear you talk, I can hear how value to you and how you were reclaiming that agency to say no without guilt is a very important thing. And it's almost in a way allowing you the freedom to know that certain relationship attachments won't be recreated because you're saying no to something that you know at some point will become a negative thing, right? And therefore healing your Uranus as an example.
Yeah.
Attachments and right engagement is deeply associated with your own personal story as well, but also just in terms of what we're saying now is that for me it's very important to point the person back to their own inner godhead, so that, right? And yeah, so I think it's important. I'm glad that you would say that, because it's good. You can take those tools and you can say, now I can use these tools for myself, right? I don't have to come back to the person and say, how do I use this? Because that's so easy. That's a highly manipulative thing, that somebody that has power to a person who is essentially in a crisis mode, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's beautiful because I did, even because of my own conditioning, my own vulnerabilities with Chiron, the second house, and my projection of not having a father. And somehow through our relationship, unbeknownst to me, I became aware that I was projecting something on you. And it was painful because I am so much want to be free, but it was like, oh my God, that thing has legs and I have to just chop the eggs. And how am I going to do it without being people, without injuring the relationship, without being angry? There were things that I was feeling a couple of times that I think at one point I was very, very open about it. But then it's like time time always gives me the perspective, and I have mountains and human design. So I need to really go up and look at the things in a different way and let time be. I'm also an emotional being. So I really learned to ride the wave in a way that is my best ally is time.
Yes.
Not to make conclusions, but just to know, okay, seeing it from here after all this time, how do I feel? And I go, wow, this is a very different view. I was so taken by this. I took it so personally, blah, blah, blah. So in a way, it's beautiful because I have the tools right now to know that every single relationship that I invest myself in, not only people, situations and things, it has to be a complete awareness of the way I relate to those needs and values. Because if I don't have them clear, I'm always going to give myself the leverage going to go to the other thing. And that's my biggest freakiest moment, because, that's my thing. That's like my Pluto is like, no, we're not going to do it again. But it has not stopped me from exploring. How does it feel and how it is? So, okay, life is very funny. It's always bringing me new ways of like you're in the dojo of practicing, whether it's with neighbors or with new people. So I got into a completely new field, Bitcoin space. My goodness.
Yes.
You would go crazy. I mean, some people are going to listen to this, but what is missing in that space is a lot of emotional awareness.
Yeah, I bet.
But it's so interesting because these people have everything it takes for that awareness, because they're aware now that matters. So it's just a tape. So I, I'm the optimist in me goes like, maybe am I there to save them? Hell no. But I can do one thing, which I'm doing in the space is this is the only space that I have been able to arrive as a 6-2 post Chiron.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Completely. So there's no expectation. Oh my God, like boundaries. Here I am, boom, boom, boom. I'm sharp as a knife. I do like this. And so people are starting to notice in me for what I bring to the table, as opposed to what I think that I should do. Because it's a thing that, what should I do in order to get into this space? That's a very fiat or traumatized way of thinking,
Right.
For me, it's like, no, I know my value. And it's not that I'm counting what my value is. Like, I'm going to show up as myself with my own pace. And then if there is space for me there, I'm going to be called into it or not. It doesn't matter. So that's what's slowly been happening. And it's amazing because this is the first time in my life, in the last 6-7 months, that I had my second Saturn return, my fifth Jupiter return. So it is like, I remember, I think once he said that, when you get the second Saturn return, it's payback time, or like, you can pick up what you, and I'm like, whoa, this is great, because I was really working deep into getting into this space. And it feels good, actually. That's why I also felt like it was the right time to write a book, because I'm closing a very big cycle. It's like,
I mean, it makes sense that you'd be closing a big cycle in your life right now. And, and as you talked about, if you look at it from a human design perspective, the 6-2 needs that space to come into and have that leadership or role modelness reflected through people. And I agree with you. I think that in that space, although I haven't been in the space in the same way that you have, my intuition absolutely sees that there is a necessity for emotional intelligence in that way. And it's interesting that you kind of bring that up, right? It's in a way that we've never talked about this, but you've pointed out something that I've sensed. So yeah, it's really, from my point of view, it's really interesting to observe that flowering of your consciousness in that space, and to see where it's taking you, and the recent successes that you've had in terms of validation and recognition, and also to be in a position where your ideas and thoughts can be disseminated into the space, the Bitcoin space, and the people that are following that, in terms of freedom, right? Not in terms of the cryptocurrency itself and investment. I'm talking about the actual consciousness of what it represents, which is that freedom dynamic. So I think there's something of incredible value to you there. And I wonder, I'm curious, do you see this group dynamic as, does it bring you the same hesitancy that all groups have brought you in the past? Or do you notice yourself emerging into this group space and sensing that there isn't a repetitive or a past pattern of, at some point I'm going to pull that Houdini
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Thank you for asking that. Well, I have met a bunch of people, and immediately I noticed that I think we did this one live about Chiron when I think we did you were doing work on Chiron. And I said to you, I don't think I have ever been in love before, because I
Sure.
always fell in love with people who kind of like put me up in a pedestal. So I
Right.
thought I needed to fall in love with them, kind of like, I don't know, they're giving me all the attention, maybe like that. Or I will fall in love, like I will fall for the people who needed a little bit of saving, like the little puppy who's injured in a corner. So it was always this dynamic, but it was never like, oh, is this good for me? Or like, what is the relationship towards myself and everything like that. So I have met few people that they see me like that and immediately notice. So I put myself in a situation where I'm like, listen, what is happening? This is what is you're getting back. Is this really true, or they're projecting? So I see all the projections immediately.
Yeah.
And it's almost like watching, like changing the channel, Hulu, Netflix, Amazon. And you go like, I'm not going to watch any of this. I've been there, done that. So, and then I ask myself, like, so what is it that I want to come, like, how do I want to come into this relationship, whatever that is? So just be very mindful about where I'm starting, because every relationship that I start that is not conscious is going to lead me to a place of darkness and then slippery and all this Neptunian thing that I don't know where I was, but I didn't understand what I was doing, which was very present in my life.
Yeah.
But right now, I know the cost. It's very heavy emotional cost. So I'm not willing to do that. So I'm going slowly. And I learned with time that it's better to be slow, because I can actually always look back and I go, we're up that part of the hill where we make a turn. Doesn't mean anything big other than I'm in the journey. So it's been great. I had also opportunities to set up boundaries immediately. So I'm known to be, for instance, I'm invited to do some spaces on X or to talk about human design, something. And so people come in, and there's so many trolls, and they come in and they just, excuse me, but they poop all over. So I said to the co-host, which is an amazing guy, DJ, I don't even know his real name, he's anonymous. So I said, look, I'll do this because we want curiosity in the space about human design and astrology and all that.
Of course.
But I have my rules, and I can be lethal. I'm not nice. I'm like, so I'm like a little ninja. When people come in and they start distracting, I immediately sense my spleen goes, and I know this person is full of bullshit. So I immediately go like interrupt and go, excuse me. So do you have a question for me? What do you mean? I was like, do you have a question about the subject that is already put over there? And I'm talking about this. I'll answer anything that is related to that. If not, you leave. And I go, boom. And I throw them on. People were like, wow, you're ruthless. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm giving this time for free. And this time is so valuable that if you are not going to respect it, I don't want you in my space. So I've been basically doing that. And it's amazing because I'm not afraid of not being liked or anything. So it's like being in the dojo and being thrown and then So I like it in a way because I'm putting myself in situations like that. Or like 2 months ago, I was invited to do a talk, and Bitcoin is full of Bitcoin bros. It's very masculine, which I have no problem. And I'm not a feminist, and I'm not saying that I'm none of that. I just want to be, validated as a human being, and if they give me the microphone, give me the time to speak, and do not diminish me, whatever. So I think this person was very nervous to introduce me, and he forgot to say my name during the thing. Exactly. And he was asking directly to the other guys, big important guys in the finance thing. I'm just the artist, right? Whatever, woman, artist, fun. So he starts asking questions, and I take the microphone. I said, I want to add something to that. And he turns and I was like, oh, I haven't arrived to you. And I said, oh, by the way, you forgot to introduce me. Turn around. I looked around, stood up, and I said, everybody, this is Monica, this and this and that. People were clapping the whole time I spoke, because I was like really being myself and going like, I'm different, you're different, we're all different, we're all important. There's no hierarchy here. So I think what I bring to the space is like the true understanding that of the non-hierarchy has to be gained in your own individuation. You cannot just claim it because you're different. You got to really show up to be your own person. So
you
I
have
think
to take up space, which is what you were doing.
Yes, you have to take the spaces. Hey, no, this is me, and be cordial about it. The guy actually, he asked for apology, and I said it's fine. It's always like that, like it's fine. But what is important is not to just let it pass, because I think that we had in this culture, especially my generation, like, oh, don't worry, I'll figure it out. No,
Exactly.
worry and do not figure it out. Confront it. That,
Mm.
oh, but I'm afraid. Oh, well, best time to confront is when the fear is here. Hello, fear. Come in. Would you like a whiskey or you like tea? You know, like, you deal
Yeah.
with it. And so
Yeah.
that's what has given me so much empowering, because I'm dealing with these fears of like not being accepted or being
Sure.
shut down in a way that it's very courageous, very Mars in Aries, third house.
Yes. Yes.
Like one of the things that I like a lot about Mars and Aries in the first house for me, because I have it in the third house, but it was to understand Mars from the warrior perspective, not the one that is fighting, but the one that is protecting a dominion.
Yes, exactly. That is its actual form, or its kind of way of relating to it. You're right.
Yeah. But if you come here and you take away my food and you spit on my face and you insult me, make sure that this sword is going to behead you, because I'm not going to be nice or gentle.
Right.
I'm not. There's no, because before I used to leave a lot of space for like, oh, maybe no, there's no maybe. Obviously,
Sure.
if I left my house open with the fridge open and everything open and you come in and you're hungry, I'm not going to behead you. I'm like, maybe there was no sign. But if I already made, you know what I mean? So it's understanding where are the boundaries that I think is so important in society to know where they are, and stop trusting that everybody has a different set of boundaries, because we were all raised differently.
Sure.
Some people were not. My family was like, believing there was zero boundaries, but it is. So yeah.
That's what the collective is trying to figure out at the moment. Is there's this, it's showing up in different ways in our societies, especially in America, where I saw something really interesting today. It had a picture of sort of you would, it's like a ribbon, and there were three boxes, three colored boxes, right? You could see through it, pardon me. And in the boxes was green, yellow, and red. And each ribbon had a little note that said, if I'm wearing green, I'm open for hugs, I'm open for high fives, I'm open for this. And then the orange one was, I'm open to that, but I'm not really. And then the other one was, I'm not like that. And I was looking at it and I was thinking about how, while it's intriguing in many ways, it is also us recovering from that 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 culture of where are these boundaries and what is my personal space, right? That's just how we're processing it at the moment. We're trying to figure out this individuality thing, and there are different forms that I see becoming embedded into our consciousness. We're embedding these different ways that we're trying to understand what are boundaries, what is personal space. So, for instance, when I hear your stories, I hear that coming out, and I hear how you are finding where that space is between, this is something that's personal, this is my time, this is my values, this is where I'm open to things, this is where I'm not open to things. And I think it's a very strong Aquarius signature, especially something that you said, which was really important, which was that, in order for you to you need to be able to command and take up space for yourself. People are not going to naturally give that to you. And so, and when you do that, you're actually also letting people know that you can respect that in them.
Yeah.
And I feel that there's a safety there. It becomes less controlling, and you're more accommodating for how people are trying to figure that out for themselves. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And that's where I think there's a subtle level of empathy and compassion that comes in when people don't get it right, but are trying, right? That you can see that there's a sense of, okay, this is where I'm trying to figure out where these boundary things are. And that's something that I'm also recognizing within myself too.
And I think it's one of the things that I got from a Taoist teacher years ago, was that when I was studying energy and martial arts and Tai Chi and, all the Taoist cosmology, the yin and yang, was to, like, he would say, never really listen to what people are saying, but always try to see the intention behind the words. So if you look also at the wave, emotional wave, you get caught with the sine wave being here or here, like top or bottom.
Yes.
But actually, what I'm interested in to see what is moving that wave, because that what is moving the wave is really what is not said, seen, or known. And this is really what is making the movement of the wave go in a specific way. And we are such a reactive
Absolutely.
civilization that we're so reactive. So in the past year or so, I've been very, very good at establishing almost like my bill of rights. When I'm like a new situation, I basically scroll on and go like, okay, you guys ready? Blah, blah, blah. And people, there's no space. And I go, there's not going to be space, but I have to do all this thing just in case there's no assumptions, because I don't like to assume anything. Especially contracts with whether I work with somebody or somebody works for me or somebody moves very close to door as a neighbor and I know this person, like, things have happened this way where I go like, oh, you're too close, or I don't like closeness. And when I like them, it has to be on my terms, that because, and it's not that how do I say, it's like, I don't identify myself as like, this happened to me. No, but it's like, I will say sometimes I'm working through this. This is a very important thing in my life. This is what I value the most, freedom. And so since I'm working with it, it's a little bit of NVC, nonviolent communication. I will say, these are the things that I value the most. Are my needs. And therefore I will appreciate if you consider them. If you don't, it doesn't matter because I'm going to let you know. So don't feel, and it was all written there in the contract. So it happens. And it's great because I'm asking for what I need and I'm getting back because I'm actually voicing and imagining what is the space that I want to be in. So I already imagine a place where I don't want to be having that kind of suffering because I got out of it. And I think I think we spoke or not a little bit, like my mother died on September 11th. And that was I have to say, it was one of the most beautiful experiences, was seeing my mom go.
Okay.
It was, and for me, my mom always was like a big presence in my life. But the last years, I tried to understand really what was my relationship to her. And she had Alzheimer's the last year, so she couldn't remember who she was, which it was always a joke. I say, Mom, I know between you and me, you can tell me the truth. You're just pretending. So we take care of you. And she was like, wink, wink. Of course, she was playing with me because she was always very playful. But then in the last year, it was very intense. She had a stroke in the summer. And she basically waited 47 days without eating because a part of the brain that develops speech and being able to swallow couldn't function.
Okay.
And I started working with something called biogeometry. So I use pendulums and sound, like I'm going into that realm. And I went over there. I was barely knowing what I was doing, but I started communicating with her through resonance. Yes. And it was incredible because she only had ability to communicate through one hand by going like this or the eyes. And we were just talking to one another. It was so intense. It was so beautiful. So my healing that I needed to finish completely to be free was really understand my relationship with my mom.
Of course.
And she died on September 11th, and I watched her 5 minutes before they called me. I knew she was going to die that weekend. I told my brother, let her go. She's ready. She just waited for each one of her children to be there. And it has been, I mean, now she's not that present, but the first 3 months, it was like she was living with me all the time. And I would ask her for things. And yeah, no, she's there. She's very present. She speaks to me. One day, one of the most powerful meditations I had, I said, Mom, I don't feel you anymore. And she says, you want to feel me? And I said, yes. And she goes, call your siblings. I'm in them. And so I called them. I said, Mom just said this. And they go, typical thing of my mom. So it's interesting because when I was able to kind of understand my relationship to her and her true love, that she was very devoted to us. And I just really realized that my healing process from my childhood was done. Yes. So liberating.
Yes.
So liberating.
Absolutely.
So I'm on my own right now, but I'm not alone. That's my mantra. I'm on my own, but I'm not alone. So, so I was going to ask you, I mean, this is a little personal, but maybe you can tap into it. Like, I don't have children, so I know that children become like also a conduit for parents to evolve.
Yeah.
How much how much does your children know about evolutionary astrology, like as such, or they know it because of how you behave?
Well, both of them absolutely know about evolutionary astrology. I have one picture of the eldest one when she was, I think, 4 years old, sitting on a couch reading Jeffrey of Green's Pluto. It's such a such a funny look. She knows, basically in the house, they'll both say, "Are we talking about Jeffrey or Ra?" Right. So that's that. They know raising vibrations as the work that we do. Sometimes my daughter will be sort of saying, okay, well, let's look at her astrology charts, but not in a
Mhm.
way that you would imagine where she'd be like, oh, let's go figure this out. She's just more curious. She Both of them know their characteristics in terms of their astrology symbols.
Beautiful.
And yeah, so they've got a very interconnected relationship with it, but we are not advocating for them to adopt it. Do you know what I mean? And so that becomes a line that both of us recognize are, important for them.
It's a
So
natural thing. How old are they? Around like 10 or something? I don't know. But
yeah, so 11 and 9.
okay, great. That's the age I was my father that, because I say this because every single impression that we have when we're little, it becomes very evident down the line. Because I
Mm,
did not really reconnect the idea that my mom and my grandmother were both pedagogues and they were basically in
right.
education. And I am kind of educating people right now, but I found a different way of doing so.
Sure.
And I have this thing called study groups. I'm curious, right? So I want to, or a wanderer. So I want to be able to use the same time. So it becomes like how practical I can do this. Like I can create a space where I'm going to be wondering about something that I might know a little bit more.
Mm,
And I have the structure of creating something where I
yeah.
can be facilitating other people. I can use my 27, like the nurture it like that, but also put the boundaries.
Yeah.
And then we explore. So I've been doing this with human design for a year and a half with 2 different
Fantastic.
groups. My God, it's interesting. So it is interesting because I'm part of them, but
Okay.
I'm facilitating, but I'm not
Yeah.
the teacher, although they call me like I'm a teacher. But it's interesting is because the pedagogy that I use is something that I learned very much when I was little. So I'm
Right.
bringing back all the
Mm,
way we were learning in the house, like the way my mother was using certain kind of methodologies that she was learning about how to like learn everything in a circle. She was very much about no hierarchies and let the
sure.
other one speak. Okay, Monica, if you know something, communicate and teach it to the other. So this is
Yeah.
the kind of environment that I have created. And because I'm more intimate, I don't like big groups. I
Gotcha.
actually don't like big groups. So I find myself more comfortable when I have small groups because
Yeah.
we've been I don't know, building like families, little bits of families
Yes.
that are important for me. So in a way, I have created my own safety family of people that I can learn with. So
Mm.
that's been like a good thing. Are you implementing any kind of community right now in raising vibration? I mean, I haven't been there in a while, so I don't know how that has progressed.
Yes, absolutely. It's definitely a movement in a new direction. Although there's a lot that is transforming for me, as I said in the beginning of the conversation. So I am the compass I'm using at the moment is spinning in all directions. It's not like that's north. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
The only thing that I'm absolutely certain of is what is being opened up within myself. So for a large point in time, a lot of my attention has been facilitating. And I've always asked myself the question, when do I get facilitated? And so this is where I'm at right now. So I'm kind of managing these two things. And so community at this moment is just showing up through evolutionary astrology immersion program that's busy being done at the moment. And but other than that, not much else, but it is potent. There's a tremendous potency in that community space. A lot of people are actually experiencing some really profound things within their lives, especially experiencing astrology in an embedded way rather than being out there and in the sky, as opposed to the thing that's actually
Mm.
living with inside of you. So, or translating that. So that's where that's at the moment. um I wanted to make a comment on something you said about. Yes, yes. You were talking. It just popped into my head. It was because I'm both me and you, our astrology charts, we've got very similar placements. Like the rising sign is Aquarius, yours is Aquarius as well. So oftentimes when we go through transits will often go through with the same house placements, right? Which is probably why there was a parallel at certain points. But one of the things that was really interesting to me is that the planet Uranus transits through your fourth house. And what happens is that there's this deep sort of transformation within you around the mother archetype, right? That you just recently been talking about. And Uranus as itself is a memory field, right? It shows up as a memory field. And my experience of my own children, when Uranus has been in my fourth house since 2018, has been a constant communication with the ancestors within me. It's a very abstract thing to say, right? But for me, it's been deeply real in the sense that all of the emotional wounds that have been showing up for me within my field were not something that originated with me. It was something that has been handed down through the mother lineage. And sort of understanding that and having that story within myself has allowed me to also grow beyond those emotional attachments and emotional dynamics that I've been faced with to have to process through and deal with and reintegrate. But for you, and this was the comment, was it's also interesting to see how your experience of the non-linear has channeled through in the way that you would use the ancestry and the mother's history and knowledge to facilitate something here on the now, right? You know, bringing the circle groups and facilitating in that way. And I thought that was kind of cool to hear you speak about, knowing that the transit. I don't know if it's finished now because I know Uranus has moved out, but it's
there for a little bit more.
Yeah, it's very powerful. Not fun, but it's very powerful that transit.
Yeah, I learned to accept and really have a lot of respect for Uranus and Pluto. Uranus went through my son Jupiter. I think it was a little bit before I met you. It was just like a rug pull. It was like, okay, you can't hold on to anything that you think is secure because everything you've been holding to security is not really secure, and you're just like a fool.
Correct.
And so I surrendered to it. And then through the pandemic, it was the biggest surrender. It's like, I'm going to leave the matrix. So I call New York the matrix because it's like, oh my God. So this is the next step that I wanted to talk a little bit, because I know it's a subject that you like to talk about and you kind of delve into it. And I've done a lot of research with the book. It's AI. And so I had to go down to the whole history of like language programming and what it's programming and what is language. I speak 7 languages. So I had to go back and say, how was it possible for me to be able to learn 7 languages? And I'm not counting astrology and human design as language, because those are languages. So it was interesting for me to go back into, like, from my own experience of how things were able to cognitively, arrive into my sphere and being able to be understood and being used, because language is only useful when you use it. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of letters or concepts somewhere. So you got to be able to use it as a tool. So it's like that. So knowing that, and the little bit of time that Pluto was in Aquarius in March through June, I mean, we saw like schizophrenia. I was like, and I was like, okay, I'm going to investigate, because this is what I do when I get very scared about something. I just go, let's go and do it. Let's go and do this and find out. And so I started really studying, and I was at the same time studying the history of money and the Federal Reserve and all the indoctrination and all this. Like, I was going to say something about when you were talking about the bracelets, about how much the G center and the will center for me are the centers that are the most damaged at this point, because we don't know who we are, and we're all working 9 to 5 thinking that we have to achieve something. So these are like really, really conditioned places to kind of tap into it once you start that process. But the interesting thing with AI was that the more I was trying to understand AI, then I was like, wait a minute, I got so programmed when I arrived to New York in 1994. Because I remember buying my first computer and the next day saying something outrageous, and people turning to me and said, oh my God, that's politically incorrect. And I was like, what's that? And so I wanted to belong so much into this new world that I kind of copy pasted everything. So I will go back to Colombia for vacation, and I will say, people say like, oh, the black guy. And I was like, no, Afro-Colombian. People are like, what the talking about? This is ridiculous. And I was like, so my language changed. Everything changed because I was in this moment of adaptation, and also, you know, my
Yeah.
moon and Neptune up there. For me, it's so easy to adapt to something, to my environment, that I really have to guard. So that's why I really kind of love having Uranus on my fourth house, because it's like, boom, boom,
It shook
we just
everything up.
ejecting from all the places. Oh, bad, we go.
Yes.
So studying all AI has, well, starting to study AI brought me back to the path of like the most powerful of all intelligence, the most powerful of all languages is within our bodies. That's the
Correct.
ultimate thing. So instead of being crazy about it, of course I use it here and there. It's like, okay, how can I empower other people to just put the light into that? That's why I do a lot of the study groups on human design. Obviously, there's a lot of evolutionary astrology there embedded. It's never one detached of the other. But because I find that human design is almost like how to say a manual, because evolutionary astrology is almost like gives you a whole potential of your soul. It's a big potential, but you have to do a lot of work. And with human design also is a whole potential of how you're going to make the right decisions, but it's a different kind of focus. So where are you right now with all this? I remember you doing a video, it was amazing. I rewatched it, the one of the Frankenstein thing. That was 3-4 years ago. You were like really way before the time. And I think you mentioned about it. I don't know, where are you there now?
So I love it. I love no, let me start again. So my relationship to AI is this. I'm guided internally by the myth of Prometheus as a way to understand it. What is this fire that we're coming into that illuminates us and relieves us from the chains of our own humanness, and then what are we also maybe blinded to in terms of what we can be burned by. So every time I interact with it, I'm consistently always asking that question: what is my intention coming into using it, as well as what is the nature of its existence in my life? And I think it's very personal. That's my personal relationship to it, and I navigate it with that way, and I feel fairly secure within myself to say, I'm not interested here. This is where I'm fascinated by. So I see it as a tool. I'm deeply influenced by some of the philosophy of Steve Jobs in terms of the fact that he created things as tools because he understood human beings evolved when they used tools. So, the phone, for instance, Apple exactly as a tool, and it can be used against you or, for you. And I think that that's my current relationship to this stage that we're emerging into, and this space that we're emerging into, is that it's fairly new. We don't know a lot about it other than the people that are actually sort of driving that ship, which I don't have access to. I'm deeply skeptical of the people that are in charge, and I am also highly aware and with my sensitivity to the not the negative, but the destruction that will come out of it, right? And so at the same time also aware of the people that have got good intentions, that are actually connected in their heart space and are not looking to be driven by power and fear, but to actually create something that enhances our capacity. And I think that's where we're at right now.
What the beautiful thing is, in mythology, who liberated Prometheus, right?
Exactly.
Chiron. So if you do your Chiron work, which is so important and so personal, because that I know, because I've been there, and it's still like, it didn't go completely away. Sometimes it's there to remind me. And actually I like to have that vulnerability with myself, because it reminds me the humanity that I have. And the potential that I have to actually transcend that pain. And so that's why I feel like as long as I understand that my humanity is really in my vehicle, my vessel won't go too far if my spirit is not in peace, then catastrophes can occur. And that's why I wanted to point this to something else, that it was created by somebody who don't know, and it's a gift. According to me, Bitcoin for me has become a state of consciousness because of the levels of things far away from the money. The money is important, but it's not the thing. So when I saw it as a state of consciousness, it was like, oh my God, we have this mathematical tool that can actually bring us, and this goes back to the Greeks, actually goes back to the Egyptians. You know, Pythagoras spent 22 years in Egypt, and he had a cult, but it was not a cult. He had something that it was sacred. You see, when you have something sacred, you don't just give it away. You just
Correct.
keep it. So I've been practicing for years now, something called the quadrivium, which is really the understanding of the numbers, because the numbers are going to define a very logical thing.
Sure.
Then you have the geometry, which is the way you represent shapes. Then you come to harmonics, which is the study of music, but actually is the study of resonance and how this, you know, the aspects in astrology, even the lines in human design. But the last important thing, and the most important of all of the four, is the validator, is astronomy, because it is through the movement of the planets that we can actually validate all the first three.
Exactly. And that's reclaiming the agency in the cosmos, right?
Yes, the quadrivium. Now, during the Middle Ages, it was still very important until, of course, when you get this knowledge, don't give it to the people, because then we cannot take advantage of them. We will have more slavery. So this is interesting because I've been actually putting all this in the book. I'm trying to find out who are the real Bitcoiners throughout time. So Dante, I have to reread. I reread the Divine Comedy. If you ever want to read something fun, it's a Divine Comedy. It's such a beautiful book. It's so lyrical, but also like we're in like hell right now. But I think he had 9 circles. We're like in 12. There's no equivalent to where we are right now. So it's interesting to use even Cervantes like throughout art, because I'm also an artist. So I'm thinking, what is the role of an artist in this society right now? Because the role of the artist in the art market is what I escape from. I escape from that. I don't want to be part of a market where people are unaware of how capitalism works and why some people say it's good and some people it's bad. I want to become aware of what is my role in this market and be able to have agency with that and freedom. So that's what Bitcoin has given to me, is the power to understand that there's a whole consciousness that has so many different levels that I can go in. So I got my miner, I understand about energy, about taking care of the network. So it's been like a beautiful analogy that I can apply all this language that I've learned into different levels that I'm still discovering.
Yeah, that's really important, to like the ability to be able to synthesize different states of consciousness, to recognize and to draw connections between them and to synthesize them, so that other things can come out of it, is in my eyes at least the mark of somebody that's highly creative, right? One thing on its own, another thing on its own, but if you see the possibility and the potential between two of these things merging, I think is in a highly imaginative state, but also an exploration to take a risk, to see if the idea actually works or not. So, you know, what you're talking about right now, and the space that you're merging into, that's what I mean when I said earlier that it's wonderful to watch you flower into that space, because it is that to me. It's not astrology or human design, and it's not a right brain abstract nonlinear exploration of things that are out there and require myth as a way to embed it into reality, but something that has more of a tangible it's just a tangible state, because you're not walking into that and saying, oh, we have to explore Jung's theory of the unconscious yet. Although Bitcoin of itself, very Iranian, is out there, right? Where is the blockchain? Where is the actual crypto coins themselves? And so that becomes something that's decentralized from the actual physical senses right here. And in a way, it is a synthesis between what's here now and what can be touched and what is essentially out there. So that's
well, the Bitcoin in itself is so Iranian because it's the seed phrase. It's not even the ledger. It's not it's the seed phrase. It's in your memory. It's like universal old-time memory. That's why it's so Iranian. It's so like, whoa. Correct. Like for me, when I really learned about the whole concept, I was like, this is dope. This is really crazy. This is everything that you ever wanted to live. Like I was born to just witness this, because it's really, really amazing. So I want to be appreciative of your time. So I have a last question. And so, okay, so we met, I don't know, 2017. I think it was right before the big eclipse on August 17th. Yeah, that was when we met. And that was like a big life changer. We're about to experience another one here.
Yeah.
The 8th of April, like that. So in relationship to, and I know that, you know, it's I don't know if it's a good, bad question, whatever, but I want to see this like in terms of like me in relationship to you, or you in relationship to me, like as a student or as a person that came into your life at that time. 2017 is very different world, very different world. How, I mean, you said it a little bit, like, but you saw the process of me changing. I mean, because there was this intensity, like I remember listening, this is something I was thinking this morning when I was meditating. It was like my wish to really get to know the path of my soul was so strong that summer that I was praying for you, please. And then I had listened to a couple of videos, and then you would not sometimes post. And I was like, what is this guy? And you know, it's this kind of thing that I will watch you, but I didn't even like subscribe, or like, you know, you're like watching and you're not like following. And then all of a sudden I was like, wow, he's speaking to me. And I remember one day when you said something, it was like, this guy's talking to me. And I remember I booked, and I was fortunate enough to have, you know, we're free. And so we kind of had a reading. I don't know if you remember, I said to you almost like at the end of and you introduced me human design. I was like, what is he talking about? And I was like, whoa, no, I have to learn everything. I remember I was like, can you teach me? And I think we started almost immediately. So how has it felt? I don't think I was one of your first students, but I mean, I've been there since a while. So how does it feel for you as a mentor to like meeting me right now and just willing to, you know, how does it feel?
Of course. I mean, it feels fantastic. It feels wonderful. The arc from that point to where you are today is night and day, right? To circle back to something you said earlier, was is that, you know, if you're going to be engaging with somebody that's ready to engage within themselves, that's an important marker. At that time, I didn't understand how much I valued that. I just assumed that people did that, right? Because of myself. It was only later on did I realize that not every single person is ready to do that for themselves. And that's been part of my personal understanding of boundaries and what I value and what I don't, and so on. It's impacted my work today. So to witness you ready for that within yourself means that that work and shift has already taken place. It's just a matter of actually going through the process, you know. So and what I would say is the most powerful thing to observe in that developmental arc is that when you arrived, it was that Chiron return experience. It was the recovery of that wound, right? The liberation mechanism. And in your conversation today, when you talked about standing up and sort of saying, this is Monica, right? This is me. And then talking with agency and being able to hold space for yourself is the metamorphosis, right? That is the change. That is the butterfly that was originally the caterpillar that arrived and said, you know, this is where I'm at. And I don't know what this is about, but here I am. And then sort of going on this arc and literally going on this arc. I mean, the amount of times that you have had to process rejection, you've had to process, you know, where do I belong? What is this? Who am I, etc. And going through all of these different, I mean, you know, you've mentioned a few times that there are other facilitators that have helped you find yourself back again, you know, and over the last year. So to witness that dedication, to witness that consistent, persistent attention to the need for wholeness within you is not something that was an intellectual pursuit. It was a genuine emotional response, because you wouldn't have been able to do what you did in that story you shared with me if you hadn't gone through that journey, because that was literally the polarity of you in 2017. So, I mean, there isn't anything other to say than just phenomenal, you know, and that's what this world is about right now. Like, a lot of people are talking about Pluto and Aquarius as AI and Elon Musk going to Mars and all of this type of stuff. But to me, it is the return from the original rape that took place with Gaia and Uranus, which is the loss of the connection to the body, right? It's the reclaiming of that, which is where true authenticity exists, because Aquarius is all about transparency. And so authenticity between yourself and your emotional reality allows you that transparency to be creative, to be seen truly, to be alive truly. And you can't do that unless you actually walk that experience of clearing out the things that stop you from living that authenticity and that transparency. And that's the place that you're at right now. That's what I see. And that's where we're headed. And you just went through that transformational journey. And that's why, if people are listening to this and they understand human design, the line 6 is the role model. So you are literally standing there saying, this is what you need to do to get to that place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Actually, when I understood the 6th line was like, I don't have to do anything. I just have to be me. I literally don't have to do anything. So it's like, yeah, understanding. Thank you for all this. I'm feeling, you said at the very beginning that you're feeling transformative. I feel very empowered, which is kind of like related in a way, because when you're empowered, you can transform, or you're transformed because you're empowered. So it's a very, very strong. And I feel like, I'm not saying that everything's going to be easy peasy, because nothing is easy peasy, but there's something so beautiful about working on oneself, is that whatever you are, you own it, it's yours. And this idea of having right now Mars leading as a planet that is telling us to be ourselves. And I think you said something about it the other day about making space for oneself. So powerful, so powerful. Because it's not about claiming the space and being in aggression. That's one thing I love about libertarians and human action, is like, is the ability to be, you will love, I'm going to send you some stuff. You will love this. The ability to be free.
Sure.
It's the ability to know that you don't go and take something from somebody else. That you really respect your body, your property, and the property of others. And so you live a civilized life.
Right.
That's
exactly.
human
It's
action.
so simple. It's so simple, and yet it's such a profound truth.
Yeah. So that's why I find it like, whoa, this is like the logical part. I can look at charts, talk about economy, talk about it. And I'm like, so the sweet thing is, my father was an economist. So he's probably laughing on his grave, going like, oh. In his books, I skipped those ones, but I got into Carl Jung. So thank you so much, Simon. This is a big, I don't know how to say, like, a coming of age in many levels, just being able to talk to you, and always forever grateful for the work that you do, because you are really creating, I know I'm the manifestor, but you're creating a lot of impact as well. So however you want to take that. You're really providing, you're providing such an amazing opportunity for people to be themselves, but the work is individual.
Yeah, correct. You can point to where to go, but the actual process itself cannot be done for them.
There's no AI who can do this for you. AI make me individuated. Yeah, right. Okay, so thank you, Simon, so much.
No problems.
I'm gonna stop recording, and probably what I'm gonna